Welcome to the second session of this morning. This session is capitalizing the online trend and opportunities in Thailand. Our panelists include Mr. Alessandro Piscini, Chief Executive Officer, Lazada Thailand. Alessandro has been the CEO of Lazada Thailand since May 2015, during when the e-commerce leapfrogs to the number 7 most visited website in Thailand and enjoys back-to-back number 1 in online marketplace voted by consumers. The other panelist is Kun Ariya Banomyong, Managing Director, Line Thailand. Kun Ariya joined Line Thailand in October 2015 as the territory's first Managing Director. His responsibilities include overseeing business strategy and operation for Line in Thailand, setting up new venture and developing leadership teams, and in addition to enhancing business opportunity for Line Thailand. And also Kun Ariya is also active in building the startup community and ecosystem in general in Thailand. This session will be moderated by Kun Oranuch Lerdsuwankij, co-founder and CEO of Techsauce and Thumpsup Media. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now all panelists and the moderator on stage, please.
Thank you very much for your time. Actually, for this session, we are more focusing about the online business, and many people in this room, I believe that most of you guys are like fund managers, angel investors, also like a corporate VCs who are interested to invest in technology and online business field. And today, I'm very excited that we have two leaders in Thai market. One from like a social media platform like Line, and another one is the Lazada, the leading e-commerce platform, not just only in Thailand, but also the Southeast Asia. But before we dig down into more detail, let's start from how about what is a Lazada scope of work, and what is your role and responsibility at a Lazada?
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you for having the time to listen to us. It's always a pleasure to be part of these type of panels, and also I'm very surprised to see that how in 5 years the audience has been growing so much. I don't think 5 years ago we would have so many people listening to us. So I think it's clear that what is happening in the digital landscape in Southeast Asia and in Thailand in particular is quite interesting. I think there is a slide, but for me it's just to share that 6 years ago I was sitting on the same side as you are. I was an investment banker, and I decided to move from Canary Wharf in London to try something new, and we started this business at the time that no one believed into. There was like e-commerce website in Southeast Asia. I think what is Lazada today is I think we're B2C market leader in Southeast Asia with presence in 6 countries. I think every one of you is pretty much aware that we are now majority owned by Alibaba Group. And I think our objective is really to facilitate e-commerce in the region and really make sure that we can build an ecosystem between sellers, which can be brands, SMEs, small shops owner, and customer, and really to make sure that this goes as fast as possible. I think there was a question before on why people are not buying online yet. I always think that the number is so low because no one is able to do the math at the moment of what is being sold on a different platform, what is being sold online, what is being sold on Facebook. But if you add everything together, I think people will be very surprised to see that that number is not small anymore. I think Paul, which is a very good friend and also one of our partners, say that e-commerce in this part of the world is mobile. I think just to share some of my stories, that when I decided to move, my mentor at the time in investment banking said, look, I'm really surprised that you are going to start something on the internet space and you're going to a region where internet penetration is non-existent, and where broadband access is very low, He's only in a certain area. And then, like, I challenge him saying, like, but people are now moving to new devices that start using mobile phones. And I think that's what people told me, that they're already there is the device that people are accessing and using to access internet. I think today, if you don't have a mobile strategy in this part of the world, you are not a player. So anyone of only desktop present is, to be honest, is not playing in this part of the world. So you need to have a mobile strategy. And that's what we developed since the very beginning. So if you look at our mobile numbers, they clearly show you that there is a leadership in e-commerce, only if you have strong leadership in mobile. And also, I think, to stress on B, responsibility, you also need to be playing smartly with social media. Otherwise, you'll be cut outside. I think the other part, which is very relevant for us, is that one of the big needs for consumer in this part of the world is to have access to products. Traditional retailer is very expensive, is not as penetrated as the more developed market. So the number that I always share is the number of square meter of retail space per capita in Southeast Asia compared to the rest of the world. So I think here we are less than 0.1 square meter per head. If I look at UK, US, we are talking about 5 to 8 square meter. And that really tells you, okay, all these square meter, what they are used for, they're used to for like storing products and to give offer to people. And it's clear a sign that people here don't have as many offer. I think we always put example of if you want to buy a racket, how many options you have if you're not in Bangkok, but you play tennis in Khon Kaen or in tier 2 cities. So I think that's one of the also point that we are building. So that's why since we started, we have been increasing the number of categories and trying to broaden the assortment as much as possible. Today, we had this year a mission to have across the 6 markets more than 100 million stock keeping units. We achieved that in 5 months into the year. So all in Thailand today, we have close to 30 million products available on the website. So I think that's really the power of e-commerce when it comes to opening up opportunity in the retail space.
The next one, I believe that most of you guys using the line, and not just only talking with your colleague, but also like talking with daughters, sons, fathers, and mother. Even though my mother, she's like baby boom, and still using line, and she loves like the big fan of Brown and Coney stickers. Pipi, I have heard that we know that Line is not just only the social media platform, but we also have any kind of business. Can you share some more detail?
Of course. So first of all, just a show of hands. How many of you use Line? So how many of you are Thai and non-Thai? So non-Thai.
Non-Thai.
Okay, so just a few of you who may not know about Line or may not use Line. So everyone else, okay. So yeah, I'm sure you use it. Not worried about that. The other thing is, before I dive in, one thing that all 3 of us agreed is, during the session, it would be, I think, more fun for both of us if you ask questions, because these are things that we know inside out. So ask us tough questions. We like that. Do we? We like that. Yeah. So let me tell you a little bit about Line. Big picture. Obviously, Ali just mentioned about mobile, and so just sharing some numbers with you about Thailand. So this is not Line, but this is Thailand. 44 million internet users. These are 44 million mobile internet users. I've stopped talking about desktop internet users, not relevant in this region, and mainly because we have very poor infrastructure. Not sure if I shouldn't say that or not in this room, but. We have poor infrastructure, we have to recognize that. But the benefit of this is it means that we sort of jump one technology, right? So broadband internet, fixed line and stuff like that, there's no way it's going to cover 70, 80, 90% of the population next couple of years. We've been talking about it for 10 years. I haven't seen much progress yet. But mobile, the beauty of this is it's mobile. So it just took like, a year and a half, 2 years. This year, we're going to have like 4G coverage across like it's already 70%. It's going to go 80, 90%, in the blink of an eye. So that's the beauty of mobile, right? And the other thing is, I have yet to see a computer that's as cheap as a smartphone, right? So today, a lot of hype around the new Samsung, the new iPhone, but the reality is that's not the future. The future is those like affordable smartphones, the 1,000 baht entry smartphone, and that's why we've gone to 44 million internet users, right? And the most important thing is, in the population of 68, 70 million people, it means that 2/3 of the population are connected, right? So it makes the internet the second most influential media, right? Or you could even argue probably the most influential media, because it's two ways, right? The other thing is Thai people spend almost 4 hours a day on their smartphones, so it makes us like super heavy users compared to other countries in the world. So we're very mobile, we're also very social in nature. So I think these are important things to understand about Thailand and Asia in general. So if I talk about Line, so 200 over million users across the world. So it all started in Japan, our #1 market, but Thailand is our second largest market. So it means that Thailand is very important to Line. Third is Indonesia, and fourth is Taiwan. So very concentrated currently on the Asian market, and obviously looking at expansions to other markets. We also dual listed on the New York Stock Exchange and the Tokyo Stock Exchange. So when we IPO'd, we were at a valuation of $9 billion US. So these are some of the numbers, so that for you as investors, you have a better idea about the kind of business we run. Also, there's a lot of I'm sure during the this morning session and other sessions, we talk a lot about tech, and basically we represent tech companies. So just to give you another angle, in Thailand we have 41 million users out of the 44 connected million users. So 94% of the people who are connected are basically our users. So like Mimi said, from your kids to your parents, everyone uses Line in Thailand. And I think kids or youngsters, not surprising. They're always the first adopters of any new technologies, right? But the surprise and our strength is even your parents are using Line, right? And it might make some of you smile, but it also shows the power of the platform, because it means that it's easy enough that my mom is actually connected, even if she doesn't know that she's connected, right? What I mean by that, if I ask her, are you online? She says, no. Do you use Line? Yes, right? But that's the consumer standpoint. So 41 million users, and what makes a tech company is we only have 200 employees in Thailand. 41 million users, 200 employees, right? So that's what we mean by being lean, right? And even like with 200 over million users, we only like a couple of thousand employees. So think about this, especially if you traditional businesses with probably tens of thousands of employees, right? So very different business model. The other thing I wanted to share with you is 41 million users, out of the 4 hours Thai people spend a day, 1/3 of that time is spent online, right? So not only we have massive number of users, but we also have a lot of time spent on the platform. So that's what makes the strength of the platform as well. The other thing I wanted to show you is this one. A lot of people don't really know what we do. So I don't only sell stickers. I do. I was hired to do a lot more than that. So obviously, we were born, and one of the reasons we were successful is stickers. And for non-Thai people, one thing I always say, if you don't understand why stickers are important to Thai people, you don't understand Thailand. And it might sound funny, but it's a reflection of the consumer behavior. So it means that if you don't understand why it's important, it means you don't understand the Thai consumer, most importantly. So I used to work for a company. I had to explain to them why Line was so successful in Thailand. I told them stickers, and they were like, "What? What do you mean?" Right? They didn't understand. But other than that, so the big businesses for us. So games is part of the big business for us. E-commerce, we're trying to venture into that space. Content is very big for us. So we have an OTT platform, online video platform. We have a news platform, stickers that we sell to consumers. So content is very important for us. Business solutions are more like B2B solutions for brands and partners and SMEs. Payments, so Paul mentioned earlier, we have Line Pay, our payment platform. And we've created new services like LineMan, which is basically an O2O platform, online to offline platform, connecting restaurants, messenger services, convenience stores, postal service, and in the future, taxis, Thai taxis. We also launched Line Finance, which is basically a financial bot assistant. And we have some partnership with Uber as well. So you see that the business that we run have moved from being a chat app to a chat platform. So to the question that a lot of people ask me, so what's the difference between Line and let's say a WhatsApp? We're not a chat app, we're a chat platform. Right? So that's pretty much it in the nutshell for Line.
We talk about the users, demographic, but actually when we talk about the landscape, we have to think about the government side and also like a public sectors. So in terms of like strength and weakness, when we compare with the other countries in Southeast Asia market, so in terms of supporting of online business, would you please share more detail about this part?
Maybe I can start. I think, to be honest, overall across the globe, when you look at digital, it's a very new space for everyone. I think there is a lot of new things coming out. So I can give you one of the examples in Italy that, I'm Italian, and one of the things I was reading on Italian newspaper is that for the first time they look at regulating advertising from key opinion leader on Instagram. So what they can do, how they can do it, and in particular how they can be a licit business, meaning like declaring taxes and everything and be taxed on what they sell. So I think in every country there is a gap. And I think this gap is constantly present because the technology is growing, I think, a lot faster than any government, and in particular in any legislation and ability. So for me, when I look at Thailand, I see that there is a lot of very good initiatives. I think we are here, and we've been able to operate as a business in Thailand with a certain ease because of a BOI that allowed us, like in their vision to promote e-commerce as a business. But I think at the same time there is a lot of regulation that sometimes like we operate in situation where the law is not written for e-commerce or is not written for digital, is not written, is a bit old. And these are the part where I think legislator and the support from the government needs to be very open-minded, and it needs to be able to create a level playing field. That's like something that I learned when I was studying European legislation, to create a field where every player can have the same type of advantage or disadvantages in a way, but needs to play with the same rule. So if in doing the regulation of the digital, you go into a situation where you penalize digital businesses or make it more difficult for digital business to succeed, I mean, it's clear that the digital 4.0 vision will not be possible. So like if a law will allow, for example, existing offline retailer to benefit of a particular incentives versus offline versus online, I mean, that will create, discontinue. So I think this is the direction the government has to take, so they has to spend more time to create a level playing field. When I look at the rest of Southeast Asia, I think everyone is in a very similar situation. I think Singapore is going through, like some new rules when it comes to taxation for cross-border commerce. I think it's just, that we are in early stage and every country is kind of trying to catching up. My suggestion is to work, together. I know the Asian is a very big topic, so for sure try to have something that goes into the direction of creating a level playing field across Southeast Asia would be very welcome. And I think the vision in Thailand is to continue to support and make sure that the investment and the support goes into every single space. Because, as B was saying before, we have substantially a very big difference being tech companies, that we need a new skill set that is not present in this market with the volume that the demand is asking. So if I look at like skilled people, developer, but also people like digital marketing, it's clear that there is a lack. So I think also pushing the education in that area, like giving more support and trying to also bring more talent in would be very welcome. And I think there is also a lot of Thai talent that today is abroad. And like my country in Italy is doing that, they are heavily subsidizing Italian coming back to Italy. I think potentially also Thai people that they are abroad, if they can bring them back, would also be very helpful.
Okay, I think what I would add to this is maybe if you look at why before we talk about challenges, why is this important? Why are we talking about technology or Thailand 4.0 and whatnot? And I think that for us to move forward, it's important that you guys actually understand why technology is important. We understand. We don't have an issue about that. But do you understand the importance of technology and how it's changing not just Thailand but the entire world, right? If you take the example of Thailand alone, you know that the entire traffic on the web is actually dominated by 3 companies. And you can guess who they are, right? The entire traffic of Thailand is in the hands of 3 tech companies. Right? So forget websites, apps, and stuff like that. Right? So I told you about this Thumpsup on the platform, so we're one of them. Right? So you have to realize that, and what it means is that we're currently entering what I call the era of platforms. Right? So think about Line, Google, Facebook, Alibaba / Lazada. Consumers are with these platforms, right? Earlier in the session, we were talking, Ali was referring to, how data as well, right? So we have a very large user base. We have data, insights that allow us to basically leverage, these users on the platform and then to eventually spin off to different businesses, right? So that's what you see happening. But basically, these big tech platforms are becoming a gateway for consumers. And so the power is shifting to tech-driven companies. Right? You might not agree, but I really want you to think about this because this is happening. Right? So I think that's the first thing I would leave with you. The second thing is I couldn't agree more that Thailand is a big challenge in Thailand, and it also hinders our competitiveness. Because if we want to grow faster, we need more people. Where do we find more people? So it's very challenging, and I think that's one area where I think private sector, but also government needs to work together, because it's important not for just the tech companies, but it's important for the country. So we talk about Thailand 4.0, but we don't have the manpower to enable Thailand 4.0 to happen. If 3 more things I wanted to share with you. Yesterday, there was a big event organized by the Digital Association of Thailand. And basically, you know that out of the total media spending in Thailand, which is around like 3.6 billion US, 10% is digital, spent on digital. While digital, the internet, is 2/3 of the population. You see the gap, right? And a lot of you are responsible for that gap, for not making it happen, right? So why are we still spending on traditional media to reach out to consumers who are online, right? So the fact that a lot of businesses and brands don't understand the importance. Users are online, right? What it leads to is actually when you look at corporations, Not yet. Right? You're lagging behind. And then, when we talk about SMEs, it's actually even worse. Right? I mean, you would agree to that. You know, it's very hard. You know, everyone talks about digitizing SMEs. We've been talking about it for years, but who has been successful in doing that? Right? Who has ever worked with SMEs? If you have, you know that it's super hard, because out of the 3 million SMEs in Thailand, 2 million are what we call SOHOs. So small office, home office. It means less than 10 employees. It means they don't have the manpower, they don't have the skill set to put their businesses online. So we can tell them to do it, or we can help them to do it. And that's, I think that's where they need help. Right? They can't do it by themselves.
If we talk about, okay, let's come back to another question that more focusing about the users. Like last 3 or 4 years ago, one of my friends, they still, even though they are same age, like some around 30, something 35, something like that. So some people can guess my age. Even though they are like a new generation, but they are still concerned in terms of they don't want to put their credit card into the online platform. But currently, many people they don't concern about this part. So what is the key factors that you think why the people like have willing to purchase online in this year? Like what is the key success factor that let the people jump from early adopters and come to the mass?
Maybe I can try to answer this. So I think before we move to purchasing online, I think the point of B is very relevant. Is that people spend a lot of time on digital asset, and they spend a lot of time consuming like videos, like going on chat app, social media, and in a way, that's part of the day-to-day life of everyone. So how many of you, while they wait for the taxi or while they are in the taxi, they check the Instagram, or they go on Facebook, they answer to friends online. And many of these guys, they started saying, oh, there is also opportunity to buy online and to get great deals and to find products that they are not easily available. So I think the reality is people started buying online just because they were spending time online, and they say, okay, like let's try, let's engage with that. And then I think slowly this kind of is starting to be a behavior that is also helping people to shop, because in some part of Thailand, some products might be not easily accessible. So when we started, 6 years ago almost now, we realized that people were buying DSLR cameras, not in Bangkok, but they were buying in a small city up country. Why? Because we had a better price and we had models that probably was not available out there. And I think this is then changed dramatically when we start launching brands of Korean makeup. That before you could only buy on Instagram from a friend that was like traveling to Korea and bringing back into bags. And all these like kind of change the viability. But on the other side is what is very relevant and what is I think today really driving the power, and the friends from Google would tell you is everyone today, before buying anything, makes the purchase decision online. So I think how many of you have checked online a product before buying it? I mean, how many of you they wanted to buy a new shoes and they went to see, oh, let me see if there is a different color of what I can see in the store, or let me check what really this watch is for, or let me check, if I can find a better cable for my iPhone. And the fact that the purchase decision is made on digital media, it's clear that if you are close there and with one click you can then buy it, it makes a significant convenience. Then the payment, yes, was a very big limitation, but I think in Lazada in particular in Thailand we focus since the very beginning to allow everyone to pay cash on delivery, and people just then start buying cash on delivery, and then they're moving to other payment. I think then there is line pay, there will be more wallet coming in for sure, the competition will get tougher, people will get used used to play and pay with wallets. So I think the reality is really consumer behavior. I think the last part for me, which is also very relevant and is a part where, as Lazada, we are focusing a lot, is how do we leverage our digital presence and online presence and the fact that we have a lot of people to also increase knowledge of consumer. I think when we look at the market, more developed market like US and UK, Italy, the example I always say is that my mother knew what model of dishwasher to buy because my grandmother had a dishwasher and she tried some, she knew that Electrolux was a good brand, but Miele is a even better brand if you can afford it. And the point is that for some of the consumer in this part of the world, they are really facing the first purchase decision and they don't really have people to ask because maybe they are also facing the same first purchase decision. So if I look, remote island in Indonesia, I'm pretty sure that when you need to make a decision to buy the new brand of diapers, you don't really have people around you that can tell you because you might be the first one using it. And I think, the knowledge that you can gain from digital is very helpful. So switching the platform from being a pure transactional platform to be a platform where you can bring knowledge to is what the brands also want. And I think that's where we can really help consumers to make the right decision and to be very relevant to them. So I think it's a combination of factors that is really changing the user behavior. I don't think we did anything in particular, but we just, keep pushing and focusing on being relevant for the customer.
And to add to that, I think that the need for traditional businesses to change is actually driven by consumer behavior, and it's changing very, very fast, even faster and faster. And to add to that, a trend that we see, a very strong trend we see in Thailand particularly, and probably maybe in some other countries, it's social commerce. And so earlier, Ali was saying, the challenge in Thailand, and especially in this part of the world, is tracking accurate numbers. If you ask the size of e-commerce, you have numbers that it swings so widely that it's very hard to say what's
even
the
in
size.
China, it went from 3 to 8% in 1 year just because they realized how to better track it.
Exactly. So it's very hard to track because one reason why it's hard to track is a lot of these transactions are not going through. I mean, they're going direct from a buyer to a seller, right? So that's what we call social commerce. And social commerce is this. In Thailand, it's like you open a shop on social networks, so let's say Facebook and Instagram, then you say, add me online, where you converse with the buyer and say, do you have my size? Do you have this color? When is it coming? And then they exchange bank account numbers. They transfer the money. So no one sees those transactions actually except the banks, right? Except the banks. But other than that, no one sees those transactions. And that's how they also buy. So you have B2B marketplaces with leaders like Lazada, and then you have also social commerce on the side that's growing very fast. And no one really knows how big is this market. And the beauty of this is, when we talk about consumer behavior, if you're a foreigner, usually people tend to call this a fragmented experience because you're actually on several platforms that are completely disconnected, right? So we call this fragmentation, right? For me, I say it works. And even worse than that, a lot of you who are doing that, you're actually transferring money to someone you've never seen. Think about this. Actually, using a credit card is probably safer in that regard. So I would say Thai people don't necessarily have an issue with payment, but somehow they're just not comfortable using a credit card. Because otherwise you wouldn't transfer money to a total stranger, right?
Okay, let's discuss in more detail about the e-commerce side. Mm-hmm. We have seen many players have come into Thailand right now. Okay, for example, not just only from the Western, but also from the China market. But what is your strategies that currently we have known that Lazada is a leading e-commerce platform in Southeast Asia and also in Thailand. What is the strategies of the Lazada that you can like?
Sure. So I think to answer to the first part is that many players are coming. Yes. I think it's clear also for the attention of the crowd here that it is a market that is growing very fast and is making a lot of noise, and it's clear that when we look at mega trends in the market, I think e-commerce is the only mega trend that has been there for maybe now 20 years. So since Amazon really started in the US, and we can really see that this mega trend is continuing in Southeast Asia, but also in South America and Africa is starting. So I think it's the only mega trend that is still there, and of course as all the mega trends, there will be more and more competition coming. I think it's not a secret that Amazon has started, recently in Singapore to offer, Prime Now services. That there were news of new Chinese player coming or looking at the Thai market. There is no news, Korean player as well. So I think the market will heat up for sure. I think what is on our side, the strategy, as I said before, is that we really want to be a marketplace where we can build kind of a marriage between one side the consumers and the other side, the seller. That can be, SMEs, medium-sized enterprises, large international brand and distributor, retailer. So really to create a platform where we can empower from one side the seller to be successful and to make profit selling online, and on the other side to basically allow the customer to make the right purchase decision, focusing on quality, service, knowledge, so giving the opportunity to customers to learn more and more about the products, and there is a lot of initiatives that we are doing there. And I think also, in making these two things together is we realize that e-commerce is not a market, and in particular in this part of the world, that you can win as a single player, I will do everything, but it's more a market where you can only win if you build around you a strong ecosystem. So if you look at the complexity of the supply chain, if you look at the complexity of the payment, the complexity of the digital marketing, and you put all these things together, you realize that there is hundreds of different businesses that can actually benefit from growing e-commerce. And our objective, which is I think one of the key strengths of the Alibaba business model compared to, for example, the Amazon business model, is that we really want to bring and lift up all this together and try to help our partner as much as possible in growing. So I think when I was looking at who are the players, and what is the complexity we need to fix. Of course, we have complexity on the payment side, and we do that partnering up with Line, partnering up with other payment platform. Then you have a complexity of the logistics, and I think this we have been doing a lot of work independently with our logistic fleet. So today, I think we are probably with Lazada Express one of the biggest logistic company in Southeast Asia if you add up all the volume that we delivered across the 6 markets. And then also there is complexity in the digital market space, because on one side there is a lack of knowledge on how to do digital marketing for e-commerce, and on the other side there is growing complexity coming from so many innovation that comes to the market. And then the last part, which for us is also very relevant, is that how do we support brands to grow into this space? And then that's how we basically have been working closely with companies like Ecommerce, that was talking before, Paul, and other players in Southeast Asia to really try to find solution for them and to empower them to go online. So I think the strategy, it's very difficult to explain in 5 minutes, but I think for me the key focus that we want to achieve is to make sure that we can really empower consumer and sellers, and to be a dominant technology platform. So you cannot win this without having a strong technology platform.
Are there any missing piece in e-commerce ecosystem in Thailand?
Missing pieces?
Yeah, missing piece, and
no, I
should
think
improve.
I think I don't see a lot of missing pieces. I think as B was saying is it's very early. So we've been only 5 years in the market, but I think the tipping point, we are probably reaching it just now. So I think the level of attention that we have been receiving in the last 18 months from big international brands and from the overall ecosystem that can work with e-commerce is just went up 10, 15 times since the acquisition of Alibaba, and I think that's really the tipping point, because the level of attention that we have seen, to be honest, it has been growing, but I think now the growth is significant, and I can see everyone is investing and focusing. So I think we are really in a situation where the penetration of digital and the penetration of e-commerce will grow very fast.
We have talking a lot about e-commerce, online platform like content platform, chat platform, but is there any other industry that investors should know?
Well, obviously, if you pick the usual suspects, so clearly e-commerce is one of the big sector where driving a lot of investment, but it's getting very concentrated, obviously, now. So what it means that I don't expect to see like any new entrants, especially not at a local level. It's just going to be a big war between Alibaba, Amazon, and JD.com, and that's it, right? So that's how I see this market. But what it means is that the next battlefield is obviously logistics and payment, and I think it's interesting because in the past year we've seen so many new players in the logistics space from both sides. What I mean by that is you have a lot of startups and tech companies doing logistics, but you have a lot of also traditional companies who have like very strong distribution channels from SCG in Thailand, FWD and whatnot, investing in logistics, and so that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. So they are set to enjoy like the growth of e-commerce, obviously. So hence why logistics is on the rise, and payment naturally is also another interesting battlefield. And I think payment, just to take a tangent on that and get outside a little bit of e-commerce, you have to. I'm sure we have bankers around here. You have to think about payment as not just as an enabler to e-commerce, but really as a potential challenger to bank. Right? If one of the e-wallets or e-payment players manage to go really mass, which we're not at this stage yet, it's still early, right? That's why you see a lot of players. But if one of us manage to scale and millions of people use e-wallets, what happens? Right? All these transactions, everyone has a license, all these transactions are not going through, don't need to go through a bank, right?
I think Ant Financial in China is already bigger than Visa worldwide in terms of managed transactions. So Ant Financial is the holding company of Alipay. And I think also in terms of asset under management, so asset that they manage in terms of selling, mutual fund, I think they're also quite relevant in the China market. So I think payment was one of these, but the reality is everything needs to be digitalized. So I was thinking about, you were discussing logistics. I mean, one of the big business that Alibaba has in China is Cainiao, which is a technology company fully dedicated for logistics. And if you think about only the digitalization of Thai Post, for example, and the complexity that exercise has, if you are the smart person that is basically like thinking, okay, how can I digitalize Thai Post, and you come with a very good solution, I mean, you will probably be one of the richest people in transport business in Thailand just because you have fixed problems. So I think some of the more traditional business, I think they need to also start thinking digital and say, okay, how I can fix problems and how I can fix and provide solution to e-commerce that can allow me to create a competitive edge. But I think in every single businesses, like being digital will create very big competitive edge.
And so e-commerce, logistics, payment, obviously related to payment, FinTech. So lots, again, FinTech is also getting a lot of hype. So I think, you know, these are the areas to watch for, and obviously content and media. So, you know, when I talk about content and media, think about, you know, what is going to happen in Thailand and around the world to traditional TV business model. So if you're Thai, you've read a lot of articles in the past couple of months about the different top channels in Thailand and what could happen or how much under pressure they are right now. TV is not going to disappear, but needs to change the business model. Music has gone through that so many times in the past, like, I don't know, 20 years, I guess. TV it's very close, very, very close, right? So you see that all in these industries, you have traditional players and you have tech companies. So hence the importance of understanding technology.
And I have seen one of the big trends right now is the big enterprise. Currently, they spin off their business. Is one of them like related to the people in the audience in this room. They as a LP limited partners and want to invest in the fund that focusing on the technologies. Some company they have a policy to invest directly to the tech company, not just only in Thailand, but also the other country. What do you think about this one? The trend of the big
I think it's
corporate?
a good move. It's a move in the right direction. So I think what Mimi is referring to is you see, obviously you have VCs and CVCs, right? And today, part of, you know, some of the VCs, big companies or, you know, wealthy people are becoming LPs, so investors are contributing to the VC funds. And then you have big corporations, you know, like setting up CVCs. So we've seen an increasing number in Thailand. I think it rolls up to I think 16 CVCs now in Thailand, across you know, banks, big corporations, telcos, energy, property,
manufacturing.
so quite wide. And the reason why I say it's a move in the right direction. Obviously, a CVC has a different role than a VC. VC is you investors, right? So it's about the return at some point. Don't know when, but at some point. CVC, it's more about survival, right? And how do you stay relevant? So how do you keep your enemy close to you in some ways? So being close to, you know, the tech scene, both in Thailand and across the world, to know what are the trends coming up, so that you don't get blindsided by, you know, suddenly a competitor you didn't see coming. So I think that's one role. Two is obviously it's trying to find synergies with the core business, eventually by investing in some of these tech companies or startups. So that's how I see the role of a CVC. It's more about the corporation itself than you know, a longer term investment. And maybe Paul can tell you more about that later. Yeah.
I think just to add one small thing and try to be a bit controversial on this topic is, I always believe that when the market is booming, money are like a commodity. So it's very easy for, you know, money are everywhere. I think, you know, in this room there is potentially a lot of asset managers. They are looking at few hundreds million a day going in and out of the wallet. I think money is a commodity, but what is really needed to this industry to grow is about, you know, like putting human capital. It's about people. It's about, you know, like mentorship, growing, you know, like people from the scratch to bootstrap, you know, company and help them to bootstrap. I think Lazada had the lucky of never being without money, so we always been extremely well funded. But at the same time, we always had, you know, across the time, very good supporter. I think the Somewhere brothers have been building business for a very long time, and you know, they were the guys that started, you know, the business, and they acted as mentor to, you know, the management team of Lazada for quite a long time. And I think, you know, that's what is really needed in this part of the world, is not only money, because I think every single big corporate here has a lot of money to invest, but it's like the support, the mentorship, how to also try to be disruptive in the way the corporate thinks, because sometimes, they want to apply the same corporate thinking to, the company that they invest into, and, like how you really diversify and separate the thinking, they give more flexibility, also from a P&L perspective, because a lot of, the CVC, they also look at, having a faster returns that, sometimes is needed. So I think, for me, it's good, but at the same time, we need to be careful that we don't get into some type of stagnation where we get the money, but we kill the talent.
I think along this track, maybe a little bit less tangible. It also boils down to the mindset of people, because the way we operate is also based on a very, very different mindset, where growth is, if we were growing at 10% year on year, we probably wouldn't be sitting in front of you today, right? So we're talking about growth that has to be like at least in the 60 to 100% year on year. And it's not because we're small, because we're pretty big already, right? So we need to be able to deliver that kind of growth, because the beauty of our business is we don't really own like physical assets, we're more platforms. So it's easier for us to scale. If you take a traditional business and you say, well, you need to grow like double the size of the production by next year, I think it's going to be very hard, right? Two is, when I talk about mindset, and I'm sure there are a lot of CFOs in this crowd as well, you in some areas you will be competing with different animals where we're not in for short-term return, but we're looking at the longer term. And in some areas, some businesses are willing to bleed for a couple of years and are hoping for that winner takes all kind of position, right? And how do you compete with someone like this when someone's going to ask you, let me look at your forecast. What's the return? What's the cost? No, that's not going to work, right? And if you want to think like a tech company, then you have to almost unlearn the way a traditional company thinks. And that's a big challenge, because the challenge is going to be actually at the top, right? Can you drive that change to happen? So I'm not trying to be condescending, but I think it's a reality that you have to recognize that you have different breed of companies that think very differently. And it's not just using technology, but behind technology, I completely agree with Ale. It's people who are going to drive the change. We're going to say, okay, we need to grow like 10x next year. How do we make this happen? Right? And not like say, oh, we can't make this happen. That kind of mindset, these are people who cannot work for us. Right?
We have 10 minutes left, so would like to ask, if you have any question, maybe like just somehow 2 questions from the floor. Would you please raise your hand if you have any question? Ding, 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 ding. We don't have the prize, but it's a good opportunity to ask the question from like the top leaders from
we have a question
Thailand.
In the back on the left.
Hi, thank you. The first 2 sessions, I think we've heard a lot about the massive growth that we've seen in this part of the world. Just wondering how much effort's been made on the data mining side, whether through AI or through the help of Alibaba. How are you analyzing some of the data that you've collected? Okay,
so I think it's clear that for Alibaba is a very big topic, and that's where and how they build the success and the ability to monetize the platform in China. Jack Ma says that in the 80s there was oil, so countries were rich because they had oil. They said in these days countries are rich because they have data and they know how to build data. So I think for us, we are a young company. They've been in the market only for a bit more than 5 years, but we do collect a lot of data. So I forgot the exact number, but I think we have close to 1 billion event per second across our 6 platforms that we record. And we have been investing in data science for the last 3 years quite heavily. One of the latest investment is that we are developing a team in Singapore of close to 100 people that will be fully focused on data science, and this will help us to support. The biggest topic is when you have a lot of data is that how you store it, and then the next step is that how you retrieve this data in a way that is fast enough, and how you make this data relevant to take business decision before you even start thinking how I sell data to my customer, the brands, and the seller. So there is a lot of work in that direction. I think one of the key challenge, and that's the recommendation that I'm giving to all my friends that they have kids, is one of the big challenges that there is not enough data engineer and scientists in this market. So every time I have a friend, I say I don't think you should be a football player. I think you're gonna be able to make more money by being a data scientist. And I think that's one of the big lack of, and it is a worldwide lack of talent in this area. But there is a lot of opportunities, and we are just starting to work on that direction.
Can I just add a little bit of a funny story? A couple of months ago, I was speaking for Chulalongkorn for the math department, the mathematics department, and told them at the end, now you have a future. That's not just you being a professor or a teacher, but there's demand for that kind of skill set.
Any other question?
Okay. Front row.
Hi. Listen from the previous section of Seb and Paul and you guys here. I sense that the platform that you guys provide at the moment is going to be a super app, as Paul mentioned, because for Lazada, you start as a commerce, right? But now you are going to the payment platform without knowing it anyway. We can pay you without going to the bank and all that. Right? Line, you starting as an instant messaging, and now you are doing transportations, shopping, and everything. So at the end of the day, you guys are going to do all activities, online activities, on your platform. Is that the direction that you guys going?
Well, that's why I said earlier we're entering the era of platforms, because everyone all the big guys all started from a core that was different, right? So one of the big tech players started from social network, now is almost a full-blown media company. Others started from e-commerce and are now at financial services. We started from chat, we're now a platform as well, providing lots of services. And as I said, the reason for the sort of rational motivation behind that is because of the massive user base, data and consumers that each of us have. And so it's, depending on where we started, it's easier for us to spin off in certain areas. And yes, you're definitely going to see that more and more across different platforms.
I think that's the direction. If you look at the Alibaba ecosystem, is they proud, and that is linked to the data side. That every customer has an ID, and across the journey of the way they spend time on traditional for example, buying products offline using Alipay, and then moving on shopping on Tmall or Taobao. Then they move on and they watch video on the equivalent of YouTube. There is Alibaba business in China, and then they move on and they go on TV live streaming. I mean, in this customer journey, you keep collecting data, you keep being relevant for the customer by providing personalization, by providing the right services, and providing value-added services. It's not a secret that one of the big advantage that, for example, Alibaba has in China through Alipay is what they call the Sesame Score, and it's the ability to basically give a credit rating to every single person, and to basically through that credit rating give access to particular services. So selling mutual fund, giving loan, and also they got to a point, but then they had to stop it because for security reasons that you can give fast track check-in at the airport if you have a particular Sesame Score. And I think all this is, in a way, the relevance of building the platform is to be 360 around the customer and trying to be as relevant as possible to the customer.
Let me just tie the two questions that you just asked. If you put AI and data together, what you're going to see, and that's why I was saying power is shifting towards tech-driven companies. Because let's say, okay, I think e-commerce is quite obvious what could happen if you put AI in. You go in to buy a certain product, and then you get a recommendation for another. Same quality, may be cheaper. Or based on your preferences, you discover a different product. So you went in to buy brand X, but you might end up buying brand Y. So who has the power now, right? Let's say all TV goes fully digital. Suddenly, your experience watching TV is not watching a channel, but watching content, regardless of the channel, right? So your revenue that used to be based on TV rating, so looking at what the rating of a TV station, now is going to shift because you might actually you don't care about the channel you're watching, you care about the content, right? So see that shift of potential shift of power happening by combining platform, data, and AI. And it's not a so distant future, I would say.
We have 1 minute left. So if I would like to give 30 seconds as a short advice for the investor, what do you want to give them?
No, I think first of all, thank you for listening to us. I think the short advice is to be open-minded and to be open to change and to be open to listen to new things. I think some of the big disruptor in the digital space, they failed so many times before getting listened and supported. So I think for me, just try to be as open-minded as possible.
I think really embrace, as I said, embrace technology, embrace change, because you're going to have to change, existing business models, and do not think that your industry is safe from change, because you've seen that technology has been going after every single industry that we know quite well, right? From retail, media, transportation, and whatnot. It's going after one another. So I think that's the thought I'd like to leave you with. It doesn't mean you have to become engineers, right? But you just need to understand, I would say, technology and the power it has to, enable different business model and even growth for your business, right?
Thank you so much, PB and Alessandro, for your time. And for the next session, we'll talking about FinTech and also a CVC. Thank you so much. Please give them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your insight, all panelists and also the moderator.